Why, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Innovantage Podcast. As always, I am your host, Max, and this is where tech and business meet to bring you your competitive edge. Today is a very special episode of the podcast because I'm joined by two very special people to talk about a topic that has been talked on this podcast a lot recently and generally speaking. So we're going to be talking about AI. But we are going to be talking about AI in a very particular point of view. We will discuss how organizations can prepare to implement AI solution, what needs to happen, and what kind of things generally happen when companies try and implement AI solutions, generally speaking. So my two guests today is Mr. William de Prêtre, the head of AI of the AllKind Group, a group that comprises several companies focusing on education and education technologies, and Mr. Artem Pochechuev, who is the head of data and AI in a company called Sigli. You might have heard of them somewhere.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks for the invitation.
Welcome to the show. So, let's start with you, William. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What has your career been like, and why have you landed in a place where you're the head of AI for a whole group of companies?
I graduated as software engineer, and I started out developing invoicing software. Now, as Artyom knows, that is about as compelling as watching paint dry. So I was looking for a way out. I joined Sensotech and never left. So things have evolved from drivers for Braille devices, and then as technology improves, always following the technology. And whereas in the beginning we were focusing specifically on visual disabilities that inhibits learning. So then we cast our net wider, and now we are working mostly on learning disabilities, be they visual or otherwise. So our products have evolved as well. So we're not just developing assistive technology for people with a visual disability, but some of our latest products are all aimed at improving learning, improving literacy, and most of it is cloud-based these days. And for 2 years already, they are now AI-based. Well, they contain AI technologies. So, but we'll talk about that more in detail in a bit, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. Artem, what about you? How did your life lead you to this wonderful place?
Well, first of all, a slight correction to what William said, a little bit more than 2 years.
Yes.
I know for sure because I'm counting.
Yes.
Regarding to your question, Max, how I end up here, that's well, I shall start from my university. That was a University of Artificial Intelligence and Informatics. So I never lost the focus on AI since I took a bench in my university, so to speak. And actually, why I'm here, that started one more 4 years ago when I started annoying the co-founders of Sigli. You probably know this story, with the suggestion of, shall we establish our own AI department and put more focus and efforts on machine learning? And I've been heard, and we did it. And I would say the recent event shows that it was not in vain, totally. So that's a good thing to remember, so to speak.
That is true. It would have been very embarrassing for us if we came to you, we first said no to you, and then came back when the AI hype just exploded. Like, Artem, we remember you told us something about AI, and there is this thing on the market where everybody likes to do that's called AI. Let's do something that you proposed a couple of years ago.
William has a nice T-shirt with plenty of phrases, his favorite phrases.
Yes.
And one of them is, I hate to tell you so, but I have told you so.
Yes. I can basically just point at my T-shirt for quotes.
I need a T-shirt like that for the podcast.
Yes.
That's
that would
that's the main thing that I'm going to wear. Okay. So you two gentlemen have both had very illustrious careers. So you are not, not just starting out your career prospects, and you have been around the tech industry for, we're not going to say how many years. That would be wrong.
Just say that I started in the DOS days.
In those days.
The DOS days. MS-DOS,
MS-DOS.
640K limit. And now I see people casually, a small large language model, billions of parameters, 8 gigabytes, small.
And I'm sort of a little bit younger, but still dinosaur.
Yes.
So that's what we'll go with. You two dinosaurs have been around for a while, since
Yes.
the MS-DOS days.
Yes.
And now we're in our wonderful AI hype where, you know how that is. You don't need me to tell you how that is. And you are now focused on actually developing those kinds of technologies and implementing those kinds of technologies into organizations where you work with, or where you work and you work with, basically. So let's start talking about that. How do technologies get implemented into companies, generally speaking, maybe? Like over the years, I'm sure AI has not been the only hype. And you've probably implemented more than one, starting from invoicing, right? But generally speaking now, when a lot of companies are looking to implement AI solutions, what needs to happen within an organization for that to actually happen? Who wants to start? Who's the bravest one?
Oh, I'll start.
Okay.
But it's important that you mention the word hype, because it's not AI, but we've been here before with the .com bubble.
Sure.
Where everybody and his dog was making websites and all kinds of applications that in the end did not really do anything useful. And we are seeing the same thing with AI. Plenty of projects, plenty of startups doing AI. Some of them doing actually good work. Some of them just jumping on the bandwagon, doing something. So for us, AllKind, the question is not so much, do we want to use AI? I think that question has answered itself. Yes, we're going to use AI. The question is, where are we going to use AI?
Yeah, it's a good question.
And that's something that requires changes at the top of the organization, but also changes at the bottom of the organization. So in some cases, you see, especially tech, and I'm not talking about developers, but tech-savvy people who start using AI tools on their own. For example, our marketing team, they use plenty of AI tools. I didn't have to go there and say, hey, AI, that can do stuff for you. No, they just, I would say, almost organically did that themselves. In other cases, especially with our software, we had to basically educate people in what is AI actually, because AI is ChatGPT, all right?
Sure.
You ask anybody on the street, what is AI? ChatGPT.
Or
But
rather, everything is AI. Anything
Yes.
that's related to software, that's probably
Yes,
AI.
Yes,
thanks to
well,
the
you
marketing,
can
of course.
perfectly sell something with AI that doesn't use AI. You just have to say it's AI. So yeah, that's. But what got the ball really rolling for us, even though I had written a language detector for one of our automatic reading tools. Technically, that's AI. But the real breakthrough came by Artem when one of our products, it's called Web-to-Speech, and it basically reads web pages for you, which is important if you have dyslexia.
Oh, yes.
So we noticed that we had troubles with navigation. It worked most of the time, but for a good user experience, most of the time is not good enough. So it had been rewritten again, and then Artem said, I have a great idea. And that great idea turned out to be AI, more specifically natural language processing. We discussed things. We built a prototype. and it's working like a charm. It's extremely powerful. It helps us a lot. And when Artyom was demoing the capabilities, our one of our product owners, Kimberly, she actually started jumping up and down with joy. I'm sorry, Kimberly, if you hear this, because she had spent a good part of a summer doing that as part of her PhD thesis, I believe. And now this AI could do it in a fraction of the time that she had needed. So she said, yeah, well, it has potential. We can do lots with this. So we have this tool built in and moving on to different things. So we're not stopping yet.
Okay. Thank you very much for that insight a little bit into how you've modernized your infrastructure. So then that naturally brings me to you, Artem, the man with the plan that came in with NLP and solved all of the problems. So how do you think? What do organizations need to do to actually start implementing AI solutions?
Well, continuing what William just said, it's definitely not the end of the story. It's just the beginning, I would say. And regarding to your question, Max, I would split it for two parts. The first one is when it comes to decision maker, it's awareness first of all. To adopt something, to start deciding that you need something, to start planning something, you should be aware about that. And that awareness is a key point if you want to have a focus company-wide on that. William knows a lot about that. And he actually mentioned about that. That's regarding to educating management as well. And the second part is implementing. For the implementing, you can't avoid having tech-savvy people on board who are aware about AI, who are willing to go deeper and deeper into AI stuff, and of course, technology partner, a reliable technology partner. Either you grow your own engineers who are aware about that, who are capable to implement what you need regarding to AI, and people who actually can tell them what is the direction, what is the purpose, what is the priorities. That's two parts: partner and technical tech-savvy managers in the company. Moreover, sometimes it starts like William told from the middle of the development of something. Like when someone bring that and say, okay, this task can be solved only with some, so to speak, machine learning solution. Well, AI, machine learning, just exchangeable terms, but on nowadays hype, people tend to forget about that. But mainly what we call AI, it's more and more machine learning technologies. So it can start as well like that, when you just show some potential and people are able to catch it, to see it, and spread it more and more. So it's like you plant a seed and see how the tree or other things growing.
So that, to my mind, sounds like you need a lot of proactivity in your approach. Where does that productivity usually, come from? Is it the engineers who should come forward to the business and tell them, look, here's this sexy new technology that we know will help us in some ways. Let's sit down and understand what specifically. Or is it the other way around, where the business needs to come to the tech and tell them, look, we've heard a lot about this AI stuff. We definitely need to figure out what we can do, but let's figure it out together before we can actually understand what we do? Or does it just come from outside of the company, maybe even like when you need a consultant to come in and tell you, okay, here I have a full top-down, bottom-up view of your business, and I can tell you that here you can implement this particular solution?
On my opinion, it doesn't matter where it starts. Is it starts in a company or an engineering department, or it brought by initiative from management, or it brought from initiative from developers, engineers. It doesn't matter. What is matter is how people adopt it. How do they understand it? How quickly they apply it to real world problems? how do they catch the potential of it? It doesn't matter where exactly it starts. It is a matter how you continue with that.
Okay, so how do you maintain that?
Well,
Maybe William, you can share in.
Artem is right, of course, and if I can fly my nerd flag, I would transfer a Warhammer 40k quote. It does not care where the AI comes from, only that it comes. But it is an important point, because especially in the edtech field, companies that do not invest in AI will be eaten alive by companies that do invest in AI. And that is, regardless of what we said about the hype, between all the dross that we could disrespectfully call them, there are some really good AI platforms in edtech. If you don't invest, if you don't want to compete, well, hang out the white flag and surrender. Because you will be beaten by those who have invested in it. But it requires suitable projects. So don't do AI just because you want to do AI. Make it work for you. Most importantly, make it work for your customers. Another part is, I mentioned, all AI is ChatGPT. Educate the whole company, no matter which department, no matter which level. Make sure that everybody understands in a general way what it all means. What is this ChatGPT? Yes, it's a large language model. What is a large language model? Explain it in simple terms. I have mentioned how those image generators work. I had to explain adversarial networks, and I think I succeeded because you have to illustrate it. You don't talk down to people, but you simplify. They are not developers. You cannot expect them to know the technical details. Moreover, they don't need to know the technical details, but they have to have that understanding, and you have to permeate your entire company with that understanding. So once you have that, you have people, like, for example, we have an education and an innovation department, and they look at the market. I myself, I look at the market in the sense that what is the competition doing or what are interesting new technologies. But the education department says, okay, this is a specific need. Can we solve this? And then is the question, is AI the answer? Well, sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. So that's you have to approach things from the whole organization at some level and set your targets, look for the suitable technologies. Artem knows I always say you can use a brick to hammer a nail in the wall, but a hammer will work a lot better. So choose your tool and solve your problem, your customer's problem. So that's how we do it.
But in the end, there's also, a little side note before I go on is we've had several government representatives on this show so far.
Yes, I know.
One from Flanders and one from Estonia. And both have put a very heavy emphasis on the same things that you're talking about, just at a larger scale, on education, on literacy, basically, amongst the population of what AI even is and how to use it and where does its limits start and end. So it's a cumulative effort always, right? You have your government trying to educate everybody on like what kind of data are you sharing and with whom and why and what for, and understanding what kind of solutions there exist, how they are AI solutions, what is an AI solution, what isn't an AI solution. And the same basically applies to a company as well, where you come in just at a smaller scale, but with a lot more context, and you educate and you promote and you tell. But that requires a lot of patience, I think.
Yes, and as it happens, I had a conversation with our CEO last week, and he said, yes, I know you brief us in monkey language, which is not true, it's Smurf language. But it is important, and they are the decision makers, and if we as engineers do not manage to explain what the benefit is, they're not going to give us any money to develop anything. So they have to understand what the benefit is. So if we come up, we have this cool AI idea, and it's going to be amazing, but we cannot explain adequately what the benefit will be. They're going to say, oh, sorry, no money. So, and with good reason. But up to this point, we have the success with Web2Speech. We are now working on another project which has shown great promise, and that is again that interplay between input coming from the engineers, input coming from the education people, and input coming from management who like or do not like the features. So that is that constant interchange, and I think you need that to have success in the AI market.
Well, that's an interesting thought as well, because, I think the benefits of any hype is that everybody is aligned on wanting to try something with it. Like everybody knows at least what is AI, because when we were starting out, not many people knew about it, right? You would have to explain what is NLP and what is machine learning and how it can be applied and why does the company need to spend so much money on it. Nowadays, you tell them AI and they're like, okay, we're listening. Now let's figure out why.
Yes, and there's one particular point that everybody keeps forgetting, including myself. And it is especially in edtech. Who is our market? Well, children on one hand, educators on the other hand, but we have children's data. So privacy, GDPR, the AI Act, all these things become very important. And as an engineer, you tend to say, well, yeah, okay, the law is the law, and really have no idea what the law says. Intuitively, you know that, and anonymize your data and everything. But practically, that's an added complication to your fancy AI solution is, data protection. It's really necessary because you're sitting on tons and tons of very sensitive data, and you don't want to leak that because that would kill your reputation. So, but it is an important thing, and the more widespread AI becomes, the more, danger is maybe an exaggeration, but the more widespread AI becomes, the more companies need to pay attention to data security, data protection, privacy protection. And that is something that we as engineers tend to overlook because we are focused on getting the AI to perform and not so much on what is the value of this data for people.
Yeah, data is an important factor. Yeah. Like I said in the previous episodes with the government officials, data was the focus of what they were talking about, because AI and what you consider to be AI is kind of a discussionary topic. It depends on how far away are you from engineering. The farther you are away, the more things become AI. And if you're very far away, then just, again, everything is AI. Like the website, it's AI, definitely. So, and in your title, head of data and AI, data comes first, not AI being first, even though the story began with AI. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the importance of data. How do you approach data as an organization? Because all organizations have it in some form, way, or shape. But what do you need to do with it, or how prepared you need to be with it in order to succeed?
Yes, indeed. Title made on purpose, and data comes first because it's same important as you said. By my observation, people tend to underestimate the role of the data in the AI. Frankly speaking, if there are no data, there is no AI, because practically you can't train your model, machine learning model, which is called AI model, which grown up to a large language model. You can't train anything if you have no data. That's why data comes first. But for majority of the people, data is something we collect and store in the database, and that's it. But you can't just, throw the data into AI and say, eat it and give me results. That doesn't work. So that's why there are lots of fuss about data, lots of questions about data, lots of, so to speak, movement towards the data. And there is a notion, data-centric mindset, so to speak, data-centric company, data-centric everything. So the very first step for AI adoption is shifting to data-centric direction. And that's what company often misses. So they hear about AI, they perceive it like some sort of a devil out of the box. It just jump out and do all stuff you need. But it doesn't work. Even these devils, so to speak, was trained. It can't do anything without the data. That's actually the latest case we discussed with William when some stakeholders asked us to perform an action with a chatbot, but they missed the data point because they wanted to this chatbot handle some issues in a certain proper way regarding to what they wanted to advise to users, but they forgot to feed it with the proper instructions and proper the data, which is actually groundwork of answer for any questions. And William can tell more about this.
Yes, so I have to use code names because there's no official product, and we always give a project a code name and let marketing and sales sort out the real name. So project is named Bulbasaur. Yes, that's a Pokemon.
Fun fact before you go on, did you know that in the Belarusian language, the word bulba actually means potato? This is just your funny word of the day, a little linguistical aside.
That was the first thing I told them.
Yes. So a lot of our products are aimed at children as the ones who stand to benefit from assistance with learning. But there is, in Belgium and the Netherlands, there is a shortage of teachers. And my mother being a former teacher, I have seen how much work a teacher actually does outside of the classroom. And again, Kimberly came up with because she too is a former teacher, came up with the idea of an AI tutor, an AI tool that actually assists teachers. So it's kind of the reverse of what the usual tools are. So we're working on that, and it is fed by a course material, and that is where Artem put the finger in the right spot. The source material decides the data, decides how good your tool is. And indeed, we can feed it with company data and ask questions and have it resolve the questions for us. But if you do not tell it that it's not in a question and answer format, but if you want to use it in a situation and you ask it a question, if the answer is not somewhere in the data, it will tell you, I'm sorry, I don't know. And that shapes the perception of your application. If it always says, I don't know, then what are you for? So that's part of the education we need to give people. And that is, yes, we build it, but you have to provide us with sufficient data to feed it, because otherwise it's not going to work.
And it goes to any AI-related task. You want to predict something, I know, either it's per transaction or not, you need the data to train your model on. You need to clusterize your clients, for example, to do clusterization. So you do clusterization on what? On the data, of course. And it comes more and more and more like this. So you want a sentiment analysis, you're going to sentiment analysis on what? You do this sentiment analysis in proper way, you're doing it in proper way of which materials and so on and so on. You can point your finger on any AI-related task, and it just doesn't work without the data. Even if you just write prompt for ChatGPT and want it to answer you something, it often goes to the data it was fed. So without the data, it can't tell you who was the last president. Yes, that's a provocative joke. Who was the last president of the United States? Without the data, it can help you, for example, reformat your presentation, so to speak. So you have to feed it with your, I don't know, thesis, abstracts, presentation if you want some results of it, and so on and so on. Like I said before, point your finger on any AI-related task. It just doesn't work without data.
Yes. We have several applications where people have asked, can we add a tutor? Yes, we can. Bulbasaur is advanced enough to be plugged into other applications. But for example, we have an application that assists children with spelling. You can create lists. As a teacher, you can create a list. So if you ask your tutor, can you make a list for me? And your data only provides the instructions for one type of list, and there are 6 in it. It will say, well, to make list type A, do this. And then because they really are your customers, will get frustrated and say, this thing is useless.
And you don't need AI for that.
Yes, you don't actually need AI for that, but it's something that is easily done with what we have.
I tell you a secret, Max. That's our motto. We often use this phrase. You don't need AI for that.
It is a very important point, because in some instance you basically have to tell everybody, but yes, really, this is basic statistics. How about we focus on that and do not do AI? Because AI is sexy and AI is cool, but it's also very expensive at times. So if you can solve it with just your sometimes high school statistics course, well, then solve it with your high school statistics course and not with AI. And use your AI resources for something that requires AI.
See, that's a huge assumption that people took statistics in high school.
Yes, well...
Once you're an engineer, anyway, you took some statistics classes in your university course?
In university, yes.
I had some basic statistics in my last year.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Nice.
But I studied natural sciences in high school, so...
See, I was the other way around. I studied programming in high school, and that didn't lead me anywhere, unfortunately, but I did try. So there are outside models to help companies assess their readiness as well. Like there is this model that's called the Foundational Operational Innovation Readiness Model. Are you familiar with it?
I am tangentially familiar with it because I studied it a bit before I put management in my sights for re-education. It helps, but and I find this true for most models. Don't use it as a silver bullet. Some organizations are different from others. It's a very good basis to work from. The one thing that there's a formula for your innovation readiness. But basically, you can't just go to management and say, well, here's the formula. This is simple science. We have your general capacity. You have your invasion capacity. Innovation capacity. Sorry, I don't know.
Invasion, I like more.
Yes, invasion capacity is very high. When we're living in Europe with our neighbors, our invasion capacity is yay big.
Yes, I don't know how my mind got there, but it works in strange ways. So I've been told. No, but like that formula, but you have to work out what is our general capacity. In an organization that has multiple companies like the AllKind Group, that becomes a task in and of itself. So we have an innovation team. So is that our innovation capacity? But how do we look at our developers? And the one thing we do with our developers is we give them general instructions. This is what we want. These are the minimal requirements. And then go and do it. We trust them. They know that we won't lead them into insolvable situations. But are your developers then part of your innovation capacity? To me, to us, yes, they are. To other companies, that's going to be a whole different question. But I find the models very interesting as a basis to work on. They provide inspiration, they provide something tangible to work with. Because if you have to do it all on your own, you're going to spend much more time trying to find out how to do it than actually doing it. So yes, they work, but they're not magic bullets.
No, things are, I'm guessing. But that does circle back a little bit to what we talked about in education, right?
Yes.
Once you're educated a little bit more, then you can leverage the system a little bit more.
And yes, well, because we come back to that point, I will hammer that point once more. Education throughout the entire company is vital. And because Artem and I talk frequently, you tend to talk shop. And if a stranger, as in a non-developer, appears, and you keep talking that way, they will not understand a single word of you say. They will see you as some mighty techno wizard, but you won't get anything useful out of them. And they're not our adversaries. We have to work with them. We want to work with them. We want to provide solutions. But that means finding common ground, and that common ground can only be found by thorough education. They don't have to build an LLM, but they have to know what it is and what its limits are.
Yeah.
And especially in AI, since we're looking at the AI hype, AI isn't, it's not that intelligent. As Artem explained, you have to feed it the correct data. People ascribe to its near divine properties. It knows everything, it can do everything. Actually, no. It's a glorified parrot. So, but it's that knowledge, it's that background that people need to spread throughout the organization. And you can do that in multiple ways. You can just, if somebody comes with a question, you can precede that question with a short educational clip, so to speak. But just sketch out what they ask, sketch out what the solution is without going into details. And sometimes organize a meetup for the entire company where you go deeper into a certain subject, like Zhenya, our data witch, did a marvelous presentation about large language models that was clear and interesting for non-technical people. I'm pretty sure that whoever saw that presentation understands what it can do and also understands what it cannot do, which is even more important than what it can do.
True. I saw that presentation. I liked it.
Yes.
Not sure about my understanding because I've had to talk about AI on this show so many times that I'm beginning to feel like I understand some things. Of course, I'm overestimating my own abilities as always, but still, I'm very confident that for the layman, it is a very interesting and appropriate way to give that information. And I also know that for a lot of engineers, it is a very big challenge to actually go out there, take a mic and start talking about stuff, especially in a very, down-to-earth way for everybody to understand.
Yes, well, great educators are wonderful people. And everybody has somebody in their career who taught them things in a way that you said, I finally understand it, thanks to that person doing that explanation. And these people are essential for many things, but in AI, which can be all of a sudden, you have a text about AI, an introductory text, and on the second page, they're talking about TensorFlow and all kinds of weird graphics. And you basically assume that you're about to summon Satan or something, because it gets that complicated so fast. So help the people and do not talk down to people because they don't know it. If you don't explain it, how will they know it?
True.
And it's important to distinguish the AI as a thing, as a notion, as a wide notion, from generative part and a common part, because AI doesn't emerge along with ChatGPT. No. It have been here way before. That's why we have three understanding, not an understanding, that's not a correct word, three definitions of AI: narrow AI, general AI, and super AI. But nevertheless, all those things emerged way before ChatGPT. And it's important to understand that generative AI and a large language model, doesn't matter how they operate with text, with images, with video, with what else, it's a separate sort of tools. It's first of all a tools, and like any tools, you actually need an instruction go together. So you get a microscope, you get a camera, you get a microphone, you gotta have an instruction how to properly use this thing. And that's, I assume, like a significant part of education William talked about. Many people saying AI means exactly these generative capacities like ChatGPT or other LLM. And that's the field where they should be educated properly, giving an instruction to use this tool and the notion to distinguish it from other tools. For example, time series analysis and prediction, that's a totally different story. Understanding weather forecast, that's a totally different story. And again and again and again. And that's actually a crucial point in, so to speak, among domain specialists to set a task to engineers, because engineers do not aware about their problems, their pain points, their things they solve. And these people, domain specialists, they're not aware about AI tools can help them. So they look at the ChatGPT and say, okay, this talking box can't solve my pain point exactly there. For example, I'm doing marketing campaign. I would like, to have a proper analysis. I would like to have customer segmentation, proper customer segmentation, to do a proper marketing campaign. I need this and this and that predictions, clusterization, and whatnot. And how this talking box can help me? Nothing. So AI is useless for me. That's not true. And that's a crucial point of education regarding to AI as a thing among the employees in company.
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. And it brings me naturally to one other thing I wanted to talk about, is that aside from your work with AllKind Group and with William, you also get a taste of other businesses that come through Sigli and also want to implement AI solutions, both large and small. And even you and I together have had a few of our adventures going on, establishing understanding of others' businesses and trying to propose some solutions. So what would you say are the crucial first steps to trying to understand a new business, coming to an expert and asking for help? How do you get that, user feedback or decision maker feedback and try to understand a lot of things very, very quickly and propose a solution based on that? Is it about the users themselves? Is it about the systems themselves? Is it just about, gut feeling based on decades of experience? How does that work?
I always tend to split the AI need, so to speak, on two directions: an internal track and external track. Internal track is all about tools which can help your employees to perform their usual duties more effectively, more fastly, maybe even more beneficial at the company. Another thing is projects you as a company sell to your customers. Can you improve your projects with AI tools? Yes or no? So those are two various directions. And being on this crossroads, so to speak, you as a decision maker, you need to decide which way to go, which is feels like more pain in there accumulated, and you keen to search for solution over there. So if it, for example, a project, you go to the main specialist and try to figure out what is the pain, what is their pain, and what are the opinion of technical people, of engineers, of how to solve it, what efforts it could take. It's always possible to find some tiny place when you can just solve one point and see the effect, which William was talking about as an example, an example for web-to-speech solution. That was the point exactly like that. That was a particular problem, and we found a solution with machine learning, and it was extremely successful. So it's always possible to find in your project or in your business processes that sort of spot where you can immediately help and show, so to speak, the wow effect of this AI help solution assistance.
Okay. And that kind of, ideally implemented, that looks like an ideal system where everybody's educated, you have completely, wonderful information flows between different departments and stakeholders and decision makers. And it all creates an environment that is very unique to an organization. And the organization then solves its unique problems through innovation, and everybody lives happily ever after. But I have a feeling that's not always the case.
No, that's the moment you wake up and say,
So let's talk about that. What's are the typical moments where you wake up? What are the typical challenges?
Well, one of the things is, and some topics come back again and again, and it is that AI is ChatGPT and ChatGPT is AI. People tend to see that one thing and try to apply it everywhere. And then there are some troubles when you try to talk them out of it. To my knowledge and experience, it has never escalated into flaming rows, but you can see that sometimes people are disappointed that you are not following their great idea because, on a technical level, it's nothing. It's not even possible. But it also depends on willingness of people to embrace AI. Sometimes you have resistance to change, and it's not because it's AI. It's just because things were fine the way they were. Why are we changing things? And we have seen these things before, and I've actually read mails from customers when we started moving solutions to the cloud, that why are we moving to the cloud? Why are you doing this to us? And the weird thing was, now people are complaining about our non-cloud solutions. Why aren't they in the cloud? So you can assume that at some point somebody's going to say, why doesn't this have AI yet? But that's, sometimes you have conflicting goals. There is a price to be paid for AI. There's no doubt about it. It can be extremely expensive. But sometimes you can't responsibly continue with a project because you know that even though it's going to be great, there's not enough resources in the company or in the entire organization to fully support this. Well, don't despair, put it aside. At one point, it will come back, as we have seen with several other things. That never throw something away; it will always come back. But organizational resistance, it happens, but it's usually again that fear of the unknown, that lack of education, if I may hammer the education point again. But that's something, and organizational inertia. Why change? This has worked for 20 years. It will work for 20 years more.
That's a big assumption.
Are you really sure that's going to last for 20 years longer? I mean, used to be a lot of people who sold horsewhips. There's not that many of those left.
And regarding to expensiveness, there are always some solutions from smart engineers from smart technical people and manager. And there is one we are going to speak on.
Yes, I was going to
about
say,
on
come
a
listen
big
to our
data
talk at Big Data.
conference. Yes, which is actually quite soon.
Yes, and that is actually an important point, because we have solved problems, then found out that they were, even though technically they were solved, practically they were too expensive to operate. And then a few years later, new technology arrives. You dust off your old solution and say, well, I can use this with a couple of weeks changing this, do some test runs, it'll work. But that is an important thing. Technology evolves, and especially with AI, it is the fastest changing technology I have seen in a while. I knew cloud computing changed a lot and went really fast. New languages appeared. All kinds of new things appeared. Capabilities of a browser, limitations of a browser. Used to be that you could directly access the file system for the browser. We're not doing that anymore for some reason. But I mean, you look at the specialized press, and every day there's something new. Every day there's something that you say, that is interesting, cool, we could use this.
And indeed, you have to track all the events, track all the publications, and all stuff like that. But in the same time, you got to be very, very aware of how to filter these things, because the informational flow is extremely high nowadays. So you have to be a good sorter, so to speak, of this thing, which is important, which is a potential, and which is not. And that's how you came to these solutions, when you can do things not that expensive as they used to be, and see the potential of something which is going to shoot, so to speak.
I'm sure we can build an AI for that.
We can,
yes.
indeed.
Yes, well, there are things, solutions that we've built that come with a whole list of new paths that you can choose. Do you have to choose them? No. If your application is suitable for the customers at the level it is, and you don't see any immediate benefit, well, don't do it yet. But keep it in mind, because there might be some point in the near future when you realize, hey, this will work. And then you have it, and then the customers are happy, and management is happy, and your competitors are unhappy.
Ideally, again.
Yes.
The land of rainbows and unicorns.
The land of rainbows and unicorns, but sometimes, and that is something we've experienced it personally, sometimes you see a project that is promising and you see this, okay, it's not going to work, we have to pull the plug here, cut our losses, just for one reason or another, it just won't work.
Let's simply say we've been on both sides.
Yes, we've been on both sides.
And that's a very, very interesting point to stop on, because I feel like, Artem, you'll agree with me that you and I have seen so many businesses over the last year and a half, give or take, come into the realization that they want AI, and then come into the realization that they either can't afford it, don't have the resources to invest, don't really want AI and want something else. So it's a process that is happening globally in organizations, big and small, where people just come in and then they want for a quick fix, quick solutions. They want to be teleported to the land of unicorns and rainbows. And it turns out that you actually need to build a ladder, and that ladder is built very, very complexly. And you need to build every single step of that ladder until you're ready to go. But I do agree with you that, once you've built a few steps, even if you're not in heaven just yet, it does not mean that those steps do not work.
Yes, indeed. But let's not forget that lots of organizations, they are in the, so to speak, decision-making point. So they see something important, they see something big. They would like not to be in the end of this train, so to speak. And they are willing to do something, but still they are thinking, is it worth of the resources we are going to spend or not? Or is it going to go in vain in a year or two? So all the resources just as going to be wasted. So let's say that's also the important moment. They are all just deciding.
True. And then again, it all comes down to education. How much do you understand about the solutions you're trying to implement
Yes.
and the problems? That you're trying to
Surround
solve?
yourself with good people, educate everybody, find good partners, and this is something, but depends on where your audience is. Governments invest as well, so make sure that you have you explore all options. So the path to heaven is clear. Go ahead and build your ladder. So even if you're not in heaven yet, you at least you can hear the angels sing.
I love it. So are there any specific educational training materials that either of you would recommend to build that ladder?
You go first.
You know what? By my perception, and William just willingly or unwillingly confirmed that, referring to our data scientist as a data witch who did a brilliant presentation about large language models. By my perception, the best way is to grow these people inside a company and get their expertise, get this vibe from them. Because many people nowadays tend to say, okay, I train you to do AI thing, and that's nothing more but, trying to get some easy money or whatsoever, and you go to listen to these people, you listen an obvious thing, and your money kind of wasted. So that's not a successful education, so to speak. But once you get a decent person who is able to go deep and able to share the knowledge, that, by my opinion, is the best way to educate people all around you, in people in the company. And that's what we do, actually.
Yes. We try to train the other developers as well, time permitting. But yes, go to conferences. They will explain how ladders are made.
Some of them.
Some of them, yes. We will not mention names, but okay, this is quite late in the podcast. But also, I mentioned governments before. So specifically in Belgium, we have a tech station. They provide resources. They provide sometimes funding, and sometimes they just get you into contact with the right people. And maybe it's just that, get into contact with the right people. And if you, in your country, there's an organization who can help facilitate that, well, why are you hesitating? Doesn't hurt to ask.
I completely agree with that. I've had my own experience with those kinds of governmental bodies, and so far they have only been positive. They do help to the limited ability that they can, so they will not naturally solve your problems for you, but like you said, introduce you to the correct people. Until you know who the correct people are, just introduce you to a bunch of people. That's already a nice start, and it usually does not cost you a lot or even anything sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's good that they don't solve the problems, otherwise Artem and I would be out of a job.
Or you would be working for the government.
Yes, well.
Probably for different governments, though.
Oh, well, you never know.
I believe having some hands-on experience is more interesting and exciting for us as an engineer.
That's really the thing. It is exciting. Education gets better when you're excited by it. And that's Artyom's too. It is exciting. We live in exciting times. In more than one way, but specifically about AI, yes, definitely.
Oh, yes. I feel like many teachers who see their young students just copy-pasting tasks into ChatGPT and then getting printed out responses of like, as an AI language model, I would reply to it like this, are feeling very excited about the future.
Yes, well...
we are not the proper people who can provide you an answer for that, but we know one.
Yes, but I have seen that teachers in Belgium actually teach high school kids how AI, various types of AI work, have them build small AI projects using off-the-shelf components, and kids are excited. they know how to work with these new technologies. That generation will grow up having I hesitate to say knowledge. They just will know. They will not have been studying it. They will just have it as part of their everyday life.
Yes, indeed. And it's sort of looks like an ancient Romanian strategy. If you can't control something, if you can't just cut out something, so be ahead of it. And that actually works well. Encourage people to use it more. I mean, this generating, getting the knowledge out of LLM, and they do interact with it more, and they do involved into this knowledge more, especially analyzing, is it lying or not, hallucinating or not, you want or not, but you will get into this knowledge you are trying to get out of this element. Why no? That's also a good approach.
Yes, absolutely.
So then, talking about excitement in the future, what do you feel? What's the future like for AI solutions, and what exciting stuff is going to come for us next?
Well, I hope no Terminators will show up.
That's good to hear. That's a nice start.
That's so ungrateful thing, to predict the future. I do not want to be this person who promised self-driving car year and year.
Don't we have a chicken to butcher and read its entrails first?
You forgot to draw a pentagram on this table?
Yes. Yeah, well, that would be a shame. And God knows what will come out. But it's very hard to predict the future, especially in something so fast moving. I do believe that there will be far more autonomous systems, the self-driving cars that Artem talked about, although...
rather mocking about.
Yes, although I think that, oh God, he's in the government now, so he can have me assassinated. No, I don't think it will, I don't think it will come from Tesla. I think it will come from somewhere else, because we've already seen that the other car manufacturers are already far more advanced in their autonomous vehicle.
And electrical vehicles too.
Yes. And one thing, and I could talk an entire podcast about this, the military applications, the amount of autonomous drones that could potentially be, yes, there are laws against it. And yes, there is an unconfirmed story that a Turkish drone autonomically hunted down somebody in Libya. There is an unsubstantiated case that the first autonomous kill by a drone was already done.
Oh, wow.
That is scary.
So fun. I feel excitement.
Yes. So the Terminators are getting closer. But we should not kid ourselves. The military is a huge driver in these developments. So look at Ukraine, the amount of off-the-shelf drones that are being used. Technology can be used for good and for bad, for offense or defense. But we will see far more autonomous systems. We will see far more AI personal assistants, agent systems that small dedicated agents that cluster together to form to solve bigger problems. That is something I believe that we're going to see a lot more of. And one thing I hope we will not see a lot of is more AI-generated image. I dread to think what will happen if somebody says that the next Hollywood blockbuster will be AI-generated. It will be a collection of tropes. And yes, it will be entertaining at some point, but I do hope that we should give our boring work to the AI and do the fun stuff ourselves. Not do the fun stuff with AI and let us do the boring work.
I'm not sure if you've heard this, but Coca-Cola recently released a holidays ad generated fully by AI.
Heard that? Yes, indeed.
Okay. Yes. Well, I stand corrected. I hadn't heard it yet.
I have heard it and I have seen it. The good news is, as far as I understand, the marketing people think is that it's very bad. You can see that the quality of it is not good, not up to Coca-Cola, holiday ad standards. You can see the jarring cuts. You can see that it's flimsy in some places. But I think the marketing approach is, okay, so that gets people talking about it,
But important to note that actually it was impossible several years ago.
Yes. And
even 1 year ago, I think it would be impossible to do it at such a scale.
And that's actually a thing. You should perceive this generative AI as a tool, not more or less. Not trying to predict where is general AI, when we are going to be substituted by machines and these, walking robots and so on and so on. That's all far away things because there are thresholds. Many of researchers are stating that large language models are on their thresholds when increasing the capacity of GPU clusters or volume of knowledges is not efficient anymore. That's how the Moore's law have been working. So what did they do? Just increasing the amount of semiconductors on chips, and chips become more powerful till the threshold. But what did they start do after the threshold? There was a kind of period of waiting. Then they started to do cores on a chip, and that was a solution. But cores are also not a panacea. So that also stops at some point and so on. So we are getting to threshold. Then there is some waiting period till the new technology, new architecture, new anything, and new hardware, of course, new capacity, new capability comes, and then we do another leap, like it was with LLM. But by my perception, this leap is so far away from here. It's so in the future. Although to predict this something is, as I said before, is very ungrateful thing because 2 years ago, who could know that the new generative AI will shoot like that? Yeah. So that was impossible. And many people are telling something about protecting against future AI and so on and so on. That's, by my perception, not more than a hype. Because imagine you try to protect yourself against LLM's hallucinations 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we didn't know this notion, hallucinate. So how could we protect against hallucinating? So the same thing goes now, and people trying to invent some protecting framework against vicious AI from the future. That's, I would say, wasting of resources, which can be channeled to other more decent deed. So I believe that we should focus on what we have now as a tools, because I'm sure that we are using not the full capacity of the tools we have nowadays. And thereby, these tools improving, and we get more and more studying how to use them, and that should be progress in next several years, I would say.
Yes, I do think that my niece and nephew, who are 10 and 8, when they're finishing their university career, they will look back at an LLM that we use the same way that we say a parchment. Oh man,
indeed.
It goes ever faster. That's definitely true. And there is a whole lot of scaremongering about AIs. And I joke about Terminators, but the easiest way to avoid Terminators is don't put an AI on the trigger. Simple. But the quest for true artificial and true intelligence is to my mind, a hugely philosophical debate. And you don't get solutions in your customers' hands with philosophy. But also, what is intelligence? I mean,
let's not go there.
People haven't quite yet decided what intelligence and thought actually means. So we're not even close to replicating them. Let's just use the things for what they are good. The LLM, for now, performs great in Bulbasaur. No hallucinations.
Almost.
It wasn't a hallucination. No, it was a prompt. But I mean, in 10 years, we ourselves will probably look back at Bulbasaur and say, when we were young, well, not so young and foolish, now we know how to use it. I think that the next breakthrough in AI will not so much come from the hardware as from models, mostly from the theoretical side, people who invent new ways of dealing with data, then throwing more and more power. I mean, Microsoft is looking at buying a nuclear plant just to power their AI data centers. I mean, it's going to stop at some point, but just the concept of vector databases. Did you see that while you were studying? No, I'm older. So it didn't exist in my time.
There are various databases, but yes, indeed, you're right. Vector databases are become relevant just recent years. Indeed.
So it's probably going to come from some bright spark that has a new approach to the way we deal with data, not so much from the power of our hardware.
Yeah, looking forward to it. You did fill me with such enthusiasm for it. So we have killer drones, we have movies that will be made by AI and not by people, homework that's being done by AI and not by students, and
not mentioning virtual hosts of the podcast.
yeah, virtual hosts of podcasts. So I have spoken so much that the virtual version of me is probably already out there somewhere selling some stuff to somebody. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen.
Like William said, we made an AI for that.
Yes. But do you need an AI for that?
Well, that's and then let's just say that again, just for the people who haven't been paying attention. Do you really need an AI for that?
I would say that would be your top comments on companies looking to implement AI, right?
Yes.
Do you need an AI for that?
Well, AI is powerful, AI is great, but use a hammer for the nail.
Okay, thank you. Artem, what do you say? What's your one comment on people trying to implement AI at the end of the day?
I would refer to this, popular saying with microscope. Do not use microscope to hammer the nails, as William said. Yes. Indeed, because plenty of things people trying to solve it with AI do not need any sophisticated thing. Just, mere statistics.
Yes. Look at us, AI geniuses, talking about not using AI.
Well, that's the Zen part of you.
Yes.
So far over the threshold that you have achieved nirvana.
Yes.
You know the truth of the universe.
I'll shave my head tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. As you mentioned several times, it would be reminiscent for me not to say that you can meet both of those wonderful people in two events that are going to be happening in December and in January, I think, right? One in Ghent and one in Bruges. So if you're in the area, if you want to hear these people talk more about AI and maybe help you a little bit, come and meet them and pay for the tickets as well, because these people need to eat too. Thank you for joining us. If you want to talk to them outside of these events and so on and so forth, you would first have to go through me. And you know where to find me, hopefully. If you don't, I'm on LinkedIn. These guys are also on LinkedIn. But thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And hopefully we will see you soon, not in an AI-dominated hellhole, but in a future full of unicorns and rainbows.
Yes.
I like this part, you have to cross Max Palm with silver to meet these two people.
Yes. I should think we should close.
They are mine. I will not let anybody near.
I think we should close with hasta la vista, baby.
Goodbye.